Welcome back to another edition of Down to the Wire, alongside of my NHL analyst Nolan Thode. Getting right into it, the bottom six, I thought, and this was at kind of at the beginning of the week near January 27th. The bottom six scoring is going well for the Canucks. That's when the Canucks played Ottawa, and I thought Tyler Mott was really noticeable during that game.
Yeah, I mean, it might be just because they're playing the Senators, or, that might have something to do with it. However, we talked last week about how, the big guns on Vancouver, like Pettersson, were, struggling a bit. So when a team is struggling, they need their bottom six to, kind of show up. And Tyler Mott, he had a decent postseason last year, scored a couple key goals. I remember a short-handed one against St. Louis at the back of my head. But, he's a guy who just, works hard, knows his role, and plays it really well. And I think, for the Canucks' success, they're going to need the bottom six to step up for sure.
And during that game as well, just a quick summary, Ottawa was really dominating that first period. 23-7 were the shots in favor of Ottawa in the first period. But, in hockey, the periods are played in three, not in one. So, it's just unfortunate that Ottawa couldn't finish that.
Yeah, no, for sure. You see it sometimes, when your team, get off to the right start, or maybe not a great start, but you really have to play a good 3 periods to be able to win in NHL, especially against a team like the Canucks. They have some experience on that roster. They know where to beat you in those areas. And Ottawa, with a little bit of inexperience, they need to play for all 3 periods to be able to stay in games, and they weren't able to do that against Vancouver this week.
The Canucks used a strong second period. That's where they scored 3 goals to really overcome, I guess you could say, some adversity that they faced. And, they made some second period adjustments, I thought, to now they are defending well against Ottawa on the rush. Because I'm pretty sure Ottawa, with them being a young team, they would like to use their speed off the rush to generate those scoring chances.
We talked last week about how, Vancouver, they looked pretty sloppy 5-on-5 against the Canadians. And I think, that's something that they definitely worked on in practice, tightening up that 5-on-5 game for sure.
One thing that is going well for the Canucks right now is the Boeser and Pettersson line. I think that when you're playing a team that isn't your caliber, that isn't up to the level, no disrespect to Ottawa, but they haven't won since their first game. They're on a 8-game winless streak right now. But sometimes as a player, you need to go up against those lower level teams, such as Ottawa. And that's how you really get your confidence back. And I think we really saw that when Boeser and Pettersson both basically popped off in that series.
No, exactly. I think the Canucks definitely needed a confidence booster. They had, maybe not a tough schedule to start the season, but just things weren't going their way. They really needed to be able to, get their game against the Senators, and they were able to do that in 3 straight wins, and they were all by pretty decent margins.
And I should say that, we do have breaking news. The New Jersey Devils and the Pittsburgh Penguins game will be postponed due to the coronavirus. There are some coronavirus cases on the Devils team. And per Darren Dreger, it seems as though this postponement will will last in the potential upcoming weeks. So stay tuned for that. Just some crazy things happening with the coronavirus, and really we're seeing how it is going to be affected in the NHL.
No, yeah, 3 weeks into the season, we've already had a couple games postponed here or there. And it's frustrating as fans, but I do think it's just something we're gonna have to get used to.
Now, one thought that I do have is maybe DJ Smith isn't the right coach for Ottawa. Like I mentioned, they are on the 8-game winless streak. They haven't won since their game against Toronto, but I thought they could use DJ Smith as, the rebuilding coach and then replace him when that team is playoff caliber, let alone championship caliber.
Yeah, I think, in terms of firing a coach, unless the team is, really, really struggling, and, the Senators are to some extent, but, they're not in a position where they need to compete. So there's no real pressure on the coach. However, I think if the continuation of, these losses and these sizable losses, and, maybe not being as strong on the defensive end, they gave up 8 goals to Edmonton last night. I think DJ Smith, he's going to be on the hot seat. However, I think, he's got a little bit of a longer leash just because that team isn't really expected to be doing anything right now.
Now, one thing that did make me kind of happy is I saw a report. I'm not sure who it was by, but it was someone. It was by Bruce Garriock, I'm pretty sure, who reports for the Ottawa Senators, for the Ottawa Sun, and he was saying that Joey Decord was, that he could get a look at in the cage, and as the fellow listeners know, I interviewed him, and just speaking on the quality of prospect, he had a filthy AHL season in 2019-20 before that got shut down. And even before that, I'm pretty sure he was still looked at as a future young prospect. So, if he does make a start, all the best to him. And I'm just hoping that, the Senators do find their mojo, because this is such an exciting team to watch, in my opinion.
No, yeah, they definitely have some great pieces throughout. Like, I like watching Brady Tkachuk play. Batherson and Norris have been fun so far. And obviously the third overall pick, Tim Stützle, he's looked pretty solid. He scored a goal last night against my Oilers, so I'm well aware of what he can bring to the table. In terms of the goalie, Joey Decord, we want to get some Pagcast representation in these major leagues, and it'll be great to see if he can step out on the ice for them.
Now, one thing that we should address, it's already been addressed, but, GM Jim Rutherford has stepped down, citing personal reasons. That's the old Pittsburgh Penguins general manager. He brought the Penguins 2 Stanley Cups, but he really screwed them over with their draft capital and really having a future without Malkin and Crosby. Those are just my thoughts. Now, I want to pass it over to you and your thoughts.
Yeah, I think Jim Rutherford, he saw when he took over the team, an opportunity. It's not often you have players like Crosby and Malkin both on your roster, and they were signed to decent contracts. So I think his mindset was just about building a contender each and every season, and maybe sacrificing some of your future to do so. I think maybe he might have gone a little bit extreme. You can see another case, the Red Wings, they made the playoffs 25 straight seasons, amazing feat. However, now they're really feeling the backlash of that, because they aren't putting a great team on the ice, and it's going to be a while before they're competitive again. So I think maybe once Malkin and Crosby start to slow down, this is when we're going to see real problems with this Penguins team.
Do you believe that Malkin, Letang, and Crosby both have a say in who the new general manager should be?
I think, yeah, for sure. Those are 3 big parts of the leadership group in Pittsburgh. They've all been there for a while. So in terms of, I think Crosby, he's a smart guy. He should know that, the direction of this Penguins team, is going to be important even when he's not on the team. So I think he'll have a say in who the right guy for the job is.
I think this job is going to be highly coveted because we have the aforementioned, big 3 in Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. And although they are aging and not getting any younger, it would be such a big accomplishment for a young general manager or just an assistant GM to take over a team that has these caliber players.
Mm-hmm. And you look through the roster, and they have some solid pieces. Jake Gensel is another piece that I really like. Zucker's decent on the left side, but it's just about their prospect pool, and it's not too deep. I think a new GM coming in will take in, the more competitive mindset. However, I think, in contrast to Jim Rutherford, they'll know what they need to do for the future.
Now, if the Pens, because that East Division, I took a look at the standings yesterday, and that East Division is quite tight. There's, a good race for the 4th position, in my opinion. So that's between Pittsburgh, New Jersey, New York Islanders, the Rangers, and the Sabres. And I think that if the Pens are on the outside looking in, I could possibly think that they could trade Crosby, Malkin, and Letang just so that they could get their, another Stanley Cup and, not have to go through a minor rebuild to end their career.
Yeah, I think, for the last couple of years, we've been waiting on the downfall of this Penguins team, and somehow they find a way to, stay in the race, stay in the playoffs. Obviously, last year, they were the 5th seed in the East. They lost to Montreal. But, I think the direction of this team, they still want to be competitive. However, not making the playoffs, especially in this East Division, when you look at some of the other teams, you'd maybe expect the Penguins to, have that 4th spot locked up. I think you can look at, maybe having a fire sale and, getting rid of these big pieces while they still have value.
One general manager that knows a lot about fire sales, like you mentioned, is Jason Botterill, and I do believe that Jason Botterill, he is a candidate, and I think that I believe he will get the general manager job. And I say that because he has background with the team. He was with the team back when they did go back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2016-17 and 2017-18. And he's currently in Seattle as the assistant general manager. That's my leading candidate. I'm not sure if you have one, but that's just who I think is going to get the job.
Yeah, I mean, being an Oilers fan in a Sabres household, I'm well aware of Jason Botterill and his time in Buffalo. Wasn't the prettiest, and he kind of went out a little sad in Buffalo, and a little unexpected as well. There wasn't much success in that Buffalo team. However, I thought they were going to bring him back for this season. He could definitely be a candidate, like you mentioned. He has that experience within the Pittsburgh organization.
One player that's been really taking the headlines, in my opinion, is Kevin Lankinen of the Chicago Blackhawks. I think so. He's ranked third on the depth chart in terms of goalie rankings, in my opinion. But currently, his stats are six games started. He's 3-1-2 with a 197 goals against average and a 930 save percentage. I mean, those are really impressive stats. 6 games through with a team that is without stars. Essentially, they're playing. It almost seems like they're not. No team is playing to lose, but it really has surprised me who this Kevin Lankinen guy is, and I'm sure he's surprised a lot of fans.
Yeah, no, his play has been incredible. And I think a really good thing for him is the fact that he is on that Chicago depth chart. He doesn't have many guys, to beat out Malcolm Subban and Colin Delia or the other goalies there. And, they could have a great performance here or there. However, consistency is more so what the Blackhawks are looking for. And Lankinen, it's only been 6 games. However, he has been very solid throughout. So seeing how he'll be able to continue this will be a storyline to go throughout the season.
Now, one thing that we should mention here is that Patrick Laine is available Tuesday for the Columbus Blue Jackets. We are recording this on Monday. So, one thing that really has impressed me about these Columbus Blue Jackets without, Patrick Laine and or Jack Roslovic is that Alex Texier, and he's really been their MVP so far. When I took down this note, I'm pretty sure it was before it was when he had 6 points through 7 games. I'm not entirely sure what his stat line is right now, but I believe he's been the Columbus Blue Jackets MVP right now. Because really, if you take a look at their stats, he's up there. I'm pretty sure he's either leading the team or he's top 3. So that's really impressed me.
Texier, I'm not sure if last year was his rookie year or his sophomore season, but he looked solid in some flashes last year in terms of his skill. I think he has that skill to bring to the table. However, his two-way game, Tortorella values a two-way game. However, if his offense stays like this, it's going to be hard to, put him down in the depth chart and keep him out of the lineup. So, he's been very exciting so far. He scored that magnificent shootout goal. I can remember within the last week, he brought it to one hand and just pushed it through the goalie in the 5-hole. And with Columbus, they're losing Pierre-Luc Dubois and they're getting Roslovic, who's a center. However, going from Dubois, who's, pretty much a solidified number one center, maybe number one, number two, you're going to look for these centers on your team to step up, and Texier has done that in the absence of Dubois so far.
Speaking of absences, I can kind of transition that to the absence of the core 4 Russians for the Capitals. And, Washington has looked so good without them. And it's mind blows me. It's mind boggling because really, I didn't think that they would perform as well, but, they really showed just how well they can play as a team when they did come back from a 3-0 deficit and beat the Isles 5-3 on January 28th. And it's just like they have so much confidence without, Kuznetsov and Ovechkin and Orlov and Samsonov. Ovechkin and Orlov are back. I'm not too sure about Kuznetsov and Samsonov, but it doesn't matter about Samsonov because Vitek Vanacek keeps playing to Samsonov's caliber. So it's almost like a good problem if you're Peter Laviolette. Who do you start? Do you ride the hot hand? Do you go back to Samsonov?
Yeah, no, I think other than, the COVID situation with the core four Russians in Washington, pretty much everything's gone right for them this season. They've been getting key victories and they've been winning in different ways. Like you said, coming back 3-0 from 3-0 down against the Islanders. I think that's incredible. The Islanders, that's probably one of the toughest teams to do it against. If you're down 3 goals to the Islanders, they're going to shift to a completely different style of gameplay and just try to beat you up defensively. However, they were able to come back and, they won 5-3 or 6-3 in regulation. This Washington team 2 years ago, they were a very solid team. 3 years ago, they won the cup. But the last couple seasons, last season, they didn't look very solid. They had, over the course of a regular season, they're a solid team, so they're going to have a decent record. However, they weren't the same team. However, I think now with Laviolette, instead of Reardon as the head coach, it makes the players a lot more comfortable, I think, and they're playing, just a very, very confident game, like you said, and their threats to win the East Division, I believe.
And just one note to add to the whole, New Jersey Devils coronavirus situation. It was just tweeted out about 10 minutes ago. The Devils now have 10 players that have been added to the NHL's COVID protocol list. And, I guess it is a good thing that their games are being suspended because as we saw with the Denver Broncos, and they had to play Kendall Hinton, who was, he wasn't good. He's a trash quarterback. And, we don't want that situation to be repeated again, whether it's in the NFL or any of the four major leagues in North America.
Yeah, it scares me because the Devils, they've played within the last 24 hours. They played the Sabres, maybe not within the last 24 hours, but they played the Sabres yesterday afternoon. So, what does this mean? Is Buffalo going to be looked at more? And like you bring up with the Kendall Hilton situation, maybe the Devils are going to have to call up David Ayres to start a couple games for them.
That would be the perfect situation here in a COVID-esque season. Once again, having another David Ayres appearance would definitely do me, and I could use that one more time.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I think everyone except Leafs fans, and even some Leafs fans, love that storyline.
Speaking of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think that Wayne Simmonds has done a fantastic job on the power play. He is used as the big man in front of the net, screening the goalie, and right now he has 3 goals in 3 games. But that's obviously when I took the note down. But that's besides the point because he's looking real solid on the power play. On January 28th when the Leafs played the Oilers, or during that Alberta swing for the Leafs, he did a really good job setting up Austin Matthews, which was in pair with screening the goalie. But I thought that he's been a really nice addition to the Leafs power play because they needed that big man.
Yeah, when they brought in Wayne Simmonds, people thought it was just, another depth signing to kind of sort of fill out the roster. However, he's stepping up in ways that I think even Leafs fans are maybe a little surprised with. Simmonds 5 years ago was a solid modern day power forward in this league when he played for Philadelphia. But ever since he got traded to Nashville, then he bounced around a bit. He couldn't really find his game. But now, he's getting these power play minutes. Sheldon Keefe, the Leafs coach, is, confident in him. And I think, his experience is very helpful to the Leafs team, especially since Joe Thornton went down and he's supposed to be out for the foreseeable future. So I think, they still want that veteran presence in their top 6. He's not playing top 6 5-on-5, but the power play, having a good net front presence and a guy, Wayne Simmonds, he's not going to get pushed around in front of the net. So I think it adds an element to this Leafs team that they were lacking last season.
I do agree with what you just said there because I was going to bring up that they didn't really have that size in front of the net on the power play, and we could kind of attribute that to their lackluster power play in the postseason. They only converted 15% on the power play in the postseason. And, when we're talking about playoffs, a lot of teams rely on that special teams to get up in the scoring.
No, exactly. And I think for the Leafs and Leafs Nation, they have to be excited about their power play so far. It's either first or second. Dallas is a little bit inflated right now because they've played less games. But, the Leafs, the talent is there. However, all the working pieces need to be there. And, just because they have the talent doesn't mean they're going to score every power play. But, with the players they have on that roster and the way they're playing right now, it seems that every time you take a penalty against that Leafs team, it might be automatic that they get one on the board.
They're second in the league in power play percentage, 43.3. The only team above them is Washington at 44.4.
Interesting. Even without Ovechkin, another feat that these Capitals are doing.
One amazing player that I saw on Saturday was Jacob Markstrom. He played out of his goddamn mind. I'm telling you, man. 37 save shutout on Saturday, like I mentioned, against my Montreal Canadiens. And, I saw Johnny Gaudreau rip one top cheese short side on Jake Allen when Calgary had the power play. And, at that moment, I knew, like, Markstrom has mojo. It's going to be hard to crack one through him. And he was a brick wall during that whole game. And, who knows? Maybe things would have been different if Carey Price had played. But what Claude Julien said factored into their decision was that to start Allen is that, Allen was a bit rusty. It had been like 9 days since he had last played. And, they need players to be fresh as fresh as possible because this season is so short and it's such a sprint.
I think with this Habs team, the Carey Price, always being the number one starter, I think bringing in Jake Allen was a huge addition for them. Having that, clear backup. Jake Allen, he's not going to be a starter for any team. He's not going to wow you that way, but he's going to, come in every third game and, play very solid. He played solid in this game. However, there's not much you can do when your team puts up 0 goals. Like you said, Jacob Markstrom was just super dominant in that game, and it looked like nothing was going to go past him, even if they played another 2 or 3 periods.
Now, once we mentioned this Calgary-Montreal game, we got to talk about the Dylan Dubé hit and just the result about that. I may be biased because I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan here, but I'm trying to take this from a realistic point of view, all right? And I've seen that hit multiple times. I've watched countless number of replays, and I see that the head seems to be the principal point of contact, and it seems to me that Dylan Dubé kind of jumped off his skates a bit to hit the head or to at least get the upper body area, whereas Dubé didn't really need to make that play. That play could have been totally unavoidable. Sure, the game was chippy and all, but you didn't have to make that play. Sure, Kotkaniemi did get absolutely clobbered, but from the result of it, Kotkaniemi got cut, and he was actually taken out, late in the second period for concussion testing. So, and what really frustrates me the most is just the department player of safety has no consistency because we see hits around the league, and if you're trying to reduce head hits, you're not going to completely get rid of it because that's hockey, and I don't see any way you can get rid of it. I think Dubé should have been suspended because you don't want this behavior to be repeated.
No, I fully agree, and I think a suspension even would have been justifiable. However, not even a penalty. It's a little frustrating, and not just as a Habs fan, as a fan of the league. Obviously, like you said, it's going to be hard to completely remove those sorts of hits just because things are going to happen. Players on skates, it's less predictable. However, when a hit like that does happen, I believe, not only a penalty, but there should be at least, a 1-game suspension just so the player can sort of learn their lesson so the league can slowly diminish, those kinds of hits that do happen.
And we should mention that, Dylan Dubé isn't a repeat offender at all. He's never had any history of any suspension. But to me, he never really seemed to be a dirty player or anything. I thought he was kind of like their Brendan Gallagher, I guess, in my opinion. But, I guess a lot of people would say Matthew Tkachuk is. So I'm not sure where Dylan Dubé would land on that scale.
Yeah, I think Dylan Dubé, a couple years ago in junior, maybe he didn't have that mindset, but they had him on a line with Lucic last year, so maybe a bit of that rubbed off on him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, playing with Lucic, you're going to be getting gritty and tough.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. Lucic brings that to the game, and Lucic knows how to get away with it, but Dubé should know, moving forward what he should be able to do on the ice and what he shouldn't.
During the late game on Saturday, that was the Jets and Canucks game, Niels Höglander for the Vancouver Canucks was all over the ice, which resulted in having him 1 goal. But I thought he played phenomenal. I really liked what Niels Hoglander has brought to this Canucks lineup.
Yeah, I love when young players come in and, some players come in and, they're already guaranteed their roster spots. They got drafted in a high position or whatnot. And Hoglander, not to scuff at, I believe he was a first or second, in the top rounds. However, you see him coming into this lineup, and each and every game he's playing as if, his status depends on it. And, players like that, they're hard to come by, and just the work ethic. And like you said, he was all over the ice, just moving wherever the puck was and trying to get his stick on everything. And, players like that, maybe not every game. However, once in a while, they're going to get rewarded for that. And he did on Saturday, getting the goal.
Canucks are 0 for 16 on the road for the power play. And I think that is something that we should pay attention to as the Canucks are in Montreal for this coming series tonight, Monday, and tomorrow night, Tuesday night. For later games, like they are on a cold streak for their power play. So it's definitely something to pay attention to.
This season, when there's no fans, it's hard to, really make any decisions or judgments based off of home and on the road. However, when you go 0-16 on the road, it's something that your team's going to notice, and you can maybe get yourself in a little bit of a funk. Montreal, like you said last week, I believe, once you get a good slot shot on the Canadiens on the power play, you might score. So I think the Canucks, this is going to be a crucial series for them. And if they can get that power play rolling on the road, then their offense should be better moving forward.
The Canucks are on a 4-game winning streak, I should mention. So they do have confidence from the Ottawa Senators series going into the next series against the Montreal Canadiens. And that can just bring a lot to the team. It ups the morale. It gets people better suited for later down the stretch.
Yeah, I think, winning 3 straight games against the Senators was huge for their confidence. But it's going to be interesting to see now that they're playing the Canadiens, one of the better teams in the North Division, how their game translates. And I hope that, I know maybe for you as a Habs fan, you don't hope that they have a great game tonight, but I'm looking to see tonight for this Canucks team to, step up and be the team that, they were and made a somewhat of a run in the playoffs last year.
Another young player that I was really looking forward to, and I had fun watching him because he was in the Ontario Hockey League. But Marco Rossi is suffering from COVID-19 complications. He has been sent home to Austria and will not report to the Minnesota Wild this season. I spoke about it last week, how I was hoping, or 2 weeks ago, I was hoping to see Rossi and Kirill Kaprizov play together. Unfortunately, that will be on hold for the foreseeable future. I'm hoping that he recovers, and I'm hoping that, I get to see him play in the NHL, because I did see him play, in the OHL. And I can say that, he is a phenomenal player, and I'm really excited to watch him.
Yeah, I think everyone's, anticipating Marco Rossi, and when he eventually does crack that lineup. Obviously, in terms of everything COVID, you wish him for the best. Going back to Austria now, I'm not too sure what his plans are for his season. However, this could be a good thing. If he can go into an Austrian league, he could still be playing with, men and guys with a bigger physical presence. And that would give him, a little bit of indication of how he's going to fare in the NHL. However, bouncing around on the taxi squad could be a tough thing for a rookie's confidence for sure. So hoping all for the best for Marco Rossi.
Speaking on better terms, New Jersey has been playing with a lot of confidence. Unfortunately, they have 10 guys out, but despite that, I think that we should look out for them. Now, obviously, they're suspended through the week, but they're only 1 point out of that 4th spot right now. Obviously, that will change. Pittsburgh with 11 points, New Jersey with 10, but I think this is a real sleeper team that once they get back to full health, I think they could probably overtake the Penguins for that 4th position.
Yeah, last year, New Jersey was, they had a great offseason. They brought in PK Subban. They still had Taylor Hall at the time, and they had the number 1 pick, Jack Hughes, as well as Gusev coming from the KHL. There was a lot of hype around them, and they really disappointed last year. However, that they got that full season under their belt. And now, like we've mentioned before and down to the wire, they're having these young guys step up for them. New Jersey is proving, night in, night out, they can stay in these games. And I think it's really a case of the 56-game schedule. Maybe over 82 games, the Devils would burn out at some point. However, when they're almost 1/5 done their season, you could see them maybe keep this pace on for the whole season, especially if the guys are playing the way they are.
I was on my way to Cobb's when I threw on WGR 550, and for those who don't know, that's the Buffalo Sabres radio network, home of all Buffalo sports. And I was listening to post-game interviews because that was right after the Sabres and Devils game, which took place at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And Ristolainen was at the podium, and he said that, the Sabres have all this talent, but they lacked work ethic in the loss on Sunday to the Devils. And I think that's, and I was reaming out Toronto for that in the first week, sloppy play along the boards. They're not winning one-on-one puck battles. They're sloppy play in the D zone, which, doesn't translate well when you're trying to create offense off the rush. And if Buffalo takes Ristolainen's, criticism to heart, then I think they could be in the thick of things because they're only at 10 points. They're 1 point out of fourth and they're 2 points out of third. So maybe that's another sleeper team. Like, this East Division is insane, and not many people are giving attention to it because we're so hyped up in the Canadian division. That's maybe because we live in Canada and TSN won't give much attention to the East Division. But I think that along with the North Division, the East Division deserves to be up there in craziness.
Yeah, this East Division, it's somewhat like a modified Metropolitan, but the Metropolitan has been, one of the toughest divisions in hockey. And, the separation between, the top teams in the division, they usually separate themselves eventually by the end of the season. And I think, Washington, Boston, and maybe Philadelphia will be the top 3 teams in that division come the end of it. But from the 4th spot to even the 8th spot, if the Rangers, find a way to salvage their season, it could be a very tight race. And it's going to be interesting to see, if you're considering the Flyers, Bruins, and Capitals all locks for the playoffs, only one of those 5 teams will get in. So it's going to be, it's going to come down to the wire, no pun intended.
Dallas does need to shoot the puck more, in my opinion. They are known as a defensive team, but man, oh man, they had 12. So I was watching their game on Sunday. It was against the Canes, and they had 12 shots through 2 periods, I'm pretty sure. And, I'm not sure if they can repeat the run that they had in the bubble and continue that strategy if they try and make the playoffs here, because unfortunately, if you try to go down into a trap style game when you're up 1-0, it won't go down well, in my opinion.
Yeah, Dallas, they're up there for power play in the league. And I think, that's where they're going to need a lot of their goals to come, because 5-on-5, they're not too interesting. And, Dallas has had lots of struggles. They've made the playoffs the last couple seasons, maybe consistently, and they did go on that run. However, every season, Dallas, it's just bound to happen. They have a stretch where their offense just isn't moving. And it's because, their team just doesn't shoot much. They're playing playoff hockey in the regular season, and sometimes it translates well, but sometimes it doesn't.
They are last in the league in shots per game, averaging 23.5 shots per game. And clearly, sometimes that just doesn't get it done in this in the NHL. Sometimes you got to put more pucks at the net. And I'm not sure if Rick Bowness's strategy is to defend more but attack less. But I think sometimes you got to switch that up.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer in just getting pucks on net. It's it's a strategy that, a lot of people overlook. I think maybe if you're not getting as many quality shots, then it could be an issue. But, there's never a harm in just throwing the puck on net, and anything can happen. Maybe a juicy rebound, or the goalie, has a poor vision on the shot and it goes in. But for me as an Oilers fan, I remember 2 years ago when McClellan and Hitchcock were the coach. The Oilers, I'd see at the end of the game, they'd have, between 20 and 25 shots, and it would just be frustrating because, there wasn't much we could do on offense. We weren't getting a lot of opportunities. And then when Tippett came in, we started the season out really well last year, getting shots, over 30. And it's good for the team's confidence, and just, percentage wise, odds are that your team's going to be better when you're shooting more.
This makes me think that, analytics have too much of an impact on a game. Because in my opinion, if we saw that behavior from Ken Hitchcock and Tom McClellan, like you mentioned, for the Oilers, and we're seeing this behavior with Rick Bowness and the Stars, it seems like to me that they're prioritizing high quality scoring chances. So they're taking data that they're getting and they're almost over analyzing it, right? You know what I'm saying? So I think that, when we're talking about analytics like this, sometimes you just got to put the puck towards the net because who knows? Who knows? It might bounce off a shin pad, could bounce off a skate. You just got to put the puck at the net. And it really does frustrate me, when Montreal doesn't get enough shots, or that's a very rare occurrence because they're second in the league in 33 shots per game.
Mhm.
But it just frustrates me when analytics decide to take over the game.
Yeah, it's like when an NFL receiver catches the ball and they start to move backwards on their route. You just want them to move forward and get as many yards as they can. Maybe one out of 10 times, they're going to get more room and provide themselves with a better hole than if they had just kept moving. But just getting the puck on net and just moving forward with your route, I think, is an important thing.
One surprising team that, well, yeah, that surprised me is the New York Rangers. I didn't expect them to have this slow start. Currently, they are 2-4-2 with 6 points. They're at the basement of the East Division. And before the season, I'm like, okay, so they got Georgiev and Shosturkin, who have amazed last season. There's absolutely no way they're going to be in the bottom of the basement. That's between Buffalo and New Jersey to decide. But I mean, I didn't expect this slow start to happen.
Yeah, I think the Rangers, last season they finished the year so hot that people sort of, remember that and maybe think that that's what Rangers team we expect to see when, maybe right now what we're getting is, this is probably a little worse than they are used to playing. However, more of a, accurate depiction of what this Rangers team is. Because last season, the second half of the year, as you mentioned, Shesterkin, he came in 14 starts, he had something like 10 wins with over like a 930 save percentage. Georgiev was also up there in save percentage. So, now that they aren't really saving the puck as well as they're used to, this offense and, the holes on this team are really being exposed.
Speaking of getting exposed, the Tony DeAngelo situation is definitely something that we should talk about. It is confirmed that he had a verbal confrontation with Alexander Georgiev. Apparently, after Keandre Miller scored his first goal, there are so many rumors out there. I don't know what to believe. Like, I'm very confused. There was a rumor that Chris Kreider, was seen in a press conference hiding his knuckles because he was punched, but that was obviously overhyped because of the whole DeAngelo situation. But what we do know is that Tony DeAngelo got placed on waivers, and it is because of results with a teammate that is to be Alex Georgiev, the goaltender. What now? I personally believe that he doesn't belong on an NHL team. This guy, he is a proven racist. He has been suspended in the past by the OHL for his misconduct and mistreatment of players. And it boggles my mind that players like Tony DeAngelo get these second, third opportunities, and players like Josh Hosang, who haven't done much, in my opinion, or maybe I've just missed the news on Hosang on what bad he's done, but I think the only thing bad that he's done is picked 66, and like he was like it was the whole Lemieux fiasco. Or that could have been Michael Del Col. I don't know, but I think that when you have a history of being a racist, we saw that with Mitchell Miller. Yeah. Um, he got rescinded. He didn't join the Coyotes. They banned him. But yeah, those are just my thoughts on the DeAngelo situation. I will pass this over to you if you want to speak about it. If not, I understand.
I completely agree with you in the fact that, we might have seen him play his last game in the NHL. If he was an incredible, maybe Norris caliber defenseman, then you could see maybe a team giving him another chance. However, right now, he has so many issues with his personality. He's had countless, like poor, things that happen in the locker room with him and his teammates. So a real locker room cancer, and his play doesn't really back that up too well either. He's fantastic on offense. He was really good for the Rangers power play last season. Adam Fox seems to have taken it over, but he's very very poor in his own end. He's more of a forward than a defenseman, and he lacks that real sort of size to do anything on the defensive end. if he doesn't, if he's not smart, he doesn't have much of a physical presence either. And I think, now that Adam Fox has established himself to be that, quarterback on the power play, I think the Rangers have realized that there's not much room on the roster anymore for Tony DeAngelo, and I think his days in the NHL are probably over.
Well, I guess 5 p.m. Eastern time is a good time to record because Darren Dreger tweeted out at 5:11. He spoke with DeAngelo's agent Pat Brisson. He says he and Rangers GM Jeff Gordon are talking with clubs with trade interest in DeAngelo. Brisson is confident they will get something done in the near future. In the meantime, DeAngelo will remain home awaiting a deal. So, I guess, unfortunately, he will be back in the NHL. Fortunate for him, but unfortunate for anyone else. I don't know who would try and acquire him. There are, I should say this, though. To his level of play, there are a lot of teams that could use him.
Mm-hmm. I think, teams that are lacking, that real offensive defenseman, maybe like a Red Wings or something, maybe they could, gamble, roll the dice on him and maybe hope that, he can turn a new page and that he's learned his lesson. However, I think, if I was an NHL GM, maybe if it was a one-time thing with a player, then, maybe you could have justification for giving him another chance. However, his issues, with his teammates aren't a thing that are new. They've been happening ever since he stepped on the ice, really. And he just comes from, that sort of upbringing. I saw an interview with his dad. I was looking on hockey Twitter last night, just trying to figure out everything I could about Tony DeAngelo. And his dad was saying, admittedly that, the way that they were just raised where he comes from, that they might be a little bit racist and there's nothing they really can do about it. That's just, the way that they were taught. So I think, especially in 2021, it's going to be hard for DeAngelo to find his way onto a roster.
And a lot of people, kind of use his political views. He's a Donald Trump supporter. If you were following him throughout last season or, I guess throughout previous seasons, he's been really advocating for Trump. And it's been well known he is a supporter of him. But, political views aside, it's really just a problem with his character and how he hasn't changed much since the OHL. And, there are a lot of cases like this. And if we're trying to make hockey a more diverse game and trying to include more Black people in it, certainly having Tony DeAngelo on a team or in the game is definitely not the right way to go.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, his agent says they're exploring trades. That could just be all for show, his agent saying that because he's being optimistic about the situation. But I just think any team that is willing to give him a roster spot, it's a bad look on their organization and overall a bad look on the league if he does, find himself playing again this season.
One other trade news I guess we should get into is the Victor Mete situation in Montreal. It has been announced today that Mete is having his season debut alongside of Alexander Romanov on that third pairing. He is replacing Brett Kulak, who is a healthy scratch. This, I'm pretty sure I read today that Marc Bergevin or Claude Julien said that this move isn't because Darren Ferris put pressure on the Canadiens to do something. It's just because, the team was winning. So why, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That was kind of like the mentality of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, since they have suffered their first regulation loss, Mete has been slotted in because of the upcoming back-to-back games.
Yeah, I think Mete, he like DeAngelo, brings a solid offensive game. Mete is very skilled, and I think, he can provide that role. However, I'm not a Canadiens fan, so I'm not too familiar with his two-way game. However, I believe that, that's where he's lacking in terms of, really solidifying himself on an NHL defense, especially this Canadiens one that is fairly deep. They had him slated with Shea Weber for a while last season, I remember, just sort of like pick up his slack. And I think, maybe also another reason why they're playing him is to prove that he still can bring something to an NHL roster and maybe get his trade value up a little bit before shipping him off to a team that could use him more than the Habs do.
Speaking on suspensions, Kevin Fiala was suspended over the weekend for 3 games for boarding LA Kings Forward Matt Roy, I believe he's a forward. I could be wrong there. He
I believe he's a defenseman. I think he's a defenseman.
Okay,
It
my bad.
doesn't matter too much, but
Yeah. He was suspended 3 games for boarding Matt Roy. He has one more game left to serve, and I thought that was a justifiable suspension for the hit that he delivered. To give kind of like a rundown, Fiala chipped the puck into Matt Roy's corner. It was the left side. Fiala was coming in off the rush, and I think Matt Roy's obviously bigger than Fiala, but I think that what was going through Fiala's head was that he was trying to outmuscle Matt Roy, or he thought that Matt Roy was going to outmuscle Fiala, but it ended up in reverse. It was actually Fiala outmuscling Matt Roy, which unfortunately led to him getting boarded and then suspended. I want to get your thoughts on the whole play.
yeah, I believe 3 games was, a solid suspension amount. Again, the inconsistency with the Department of Player Safety. What is a suspension and what isn't. The boards is such a tricky part of hockey, especially in contact. But I do believe that every NHL player, they've been playing hockey long enough that they should know what kind of hit they can make on the boards. Some hits on the boards is just like a little rub out, move on and carry on. However, when you're in a situation like that, I think it was unfortunate for Fiala because he was expecting Roy to, fight back a little bit more. However, it just when a dirty play happens on the boards, it's very clear.
And you can see from the replay that Fiala immediately was worried about the hit. He honestly felt really bad. And that's what I like about hockey in a way, is that we see the dirty hits and we see the enforcers in the past, like a Zach Ronaldo delivering, or when I'm forgetting the Matt Cook, that's the name. We see those guys deliver dirty hits and they don't really apologize or you show any emotion afterwards. But once Fiala delivered the hit, we could see, visually he was, kind of distressed and like, oh no, I didn't mean to do it that way. I didn't mean for this to be the outcome.
Yeah, the instant regret look on his face, like you mentioned. You can tell that he really didn't mean to, or didn't mean to do it as much as he did. Or just right away as it happened, he realized that probably wasn't a good thing. Everything went through his head. Is this guy okay? And he probably thought he was getting suspended at the moment as well. And I think that, even though that he showed that, empathy for Roy when he went down on the ice, giving him the 3 games is still fair.
Speaking on the West Division is where the Minnesota Wild play. I think that the division is perfectly where I thought it would be. There's nothing really too surprising there. St. Louis is at the top, Colorado second, Minnesota third, and Vegas is fourth. Obviously that division has had some postponements due to the coronavirus. But nothing really too surprising there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think nothing surprising about it. However, it's going to be interesting to see what the Avalanche do. I believe McKinnon left the game last night. He didn't return. I'm not too sure what his status is, but that'd be a big blow to the Avalanche if they were to lose their number one center.
Now, for moving on to the Central Division, I think that, it's pretty close there. The top 2 teams are tied with 11 points. Carolina's third. So we got Florida at first, Columbus second, Carolina's third at 10 points. Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Chicago are tied for fourth with 9 points. Nashville is seventh with 8, and Detroit is eighth with 6 points. That division's really close. And the only reason why it is so close is because of the postponements they've had. Currently, the Blackhawks, Predators, Hurricanes, Stars, and Panthers all have had their games either rescheduled and postponed or, canceled.
Yeah, early season, the standings can be super raw and not so much what you're used to seeing and what they are at the end of the season. And I think, we'll get a better idea as the season goes along. But, like you mentioned, it is a little bit of a close race up at the top. Obviously, I think Tampa will finish top 4 100%. Carolina's solid as well. But, Florida, can they keep up the play that they've had so far? They've had a really hot start, but whether or not they keep it. And Dallas, like you said, if they're going to be not shooting as much and playing in these boring games, if they're losing them, then they can lose that playoff spot they can lose the playoff spot that they had last season.
Moving on to the North Division, our favorite division here in Canada, because it is our only one. Uh, Connor McDavid is such a treat to watch. You, as an Oilers fan, love him, of course, and get to see him play as often as possible. And we all saw his fantastic goal as he literally went through the whole Maple Leafs team on the power play there. He was just so phenomenal, and I'm so happy he got drafted to a Canadian team.
Yeah, McDavid is like you said, a treat to watch, and as an Oilers fan, it pains me because he's so entertaining. However, this team around him, it's frustrating at times when when we have a player like McDavid, we should be having no problem winning games. Defensively, he's always been known to be a little lazier. He stepped it up this season. So he's adding another element to his game, and just these highlight reel goals. We're just sort of used to seeing them at this point, but each and every one still leaves your jaw on the floor.
Now, were you nervous during that game last night? Because the Oilers had a 5-1 lead, and just the score ending in 8-5, it probably shouldn't have gone that way.
I think when it was 5-1 and they crept it to 5-3, I wasn't so nervous. Because, Stuart Skinner, who was making his first start, you expected him to, be a little shaky, having not faced NHL, caliber play before. And then it went to 8-3, and I thought the game was wrapped up. And then 2 quick goals by Ottawa. When it was 8-5, I started to panic a little bit. But I talked myself through it. I made sure, I thought, no way Ottawa's going to score 9 goals, really. And then the Oilers kind of, tighten things up to finish that game and get Stuart Skinner his first career win.
McDavid and Draisaitl combined for 11 points, was it?
Last night, 11, yeah.
Yeah, dude, that is insane. Because the record for most points in one game in NHL history is 10 points, set by Darryl Sittler. And Draisaitl was 4 points off. And, that's crazy to me because he was 1 point off tying the Oilers record. The Oilers record is 7 points by Wayne Gretzky, which he accomplished that multiple times. But yeah, like that was such a historic performance by that Edmonton duo.
Yeah, no, I mean, every once in a while they'll have a game like that where you look at the stat sheet and it's crazy. They're doing work that a regular player would accomplish in 5 games in just 1. I remember a crazy stat I saw this morning that McDavid and Draisaitl combined have more points than the entire Anaheim Ducks roster this season. And that's just crazy that 2 players are doing that. A lot of people point it towards, that's all that the Oilers offense is. And sure, they're getting the bulk of the scoring. However, I think people are underrating, what other pieces are contributing to McDavid and Draisaitl being able to get all these points.
I think Dominic Cahoon also had a really good game last night as well against the Senators, and he's an underrated player, as well as Kailer Yamamoto. Obviously the Oilers, the bulk of the talk is going to be about McDavid and Draisaitl, but I think, some of it should go to their line mates such as Cahoon and Yamamoto.
Yeah, the Oilers made the playoffs in 2017 based off of, the fact that McDavid had a 100-point season and Talbot was, a borderline Vezina candidate. So everything went well. And then for 2 years, we kind of struggled, and playing McDavid and Draisaitl on the same line, it proved to not be as effective. However, now adding an element to our team, having them on 2 different lines, 5-on-5, and having Draisaitl play with Cahoon and Yamamoto on his wings, those are 2 guys that just, get to the net hard and they have some speed. So I think, credit to Holland. He's surrounded his star players with players that complement them well.
Now, one last note before we get to the predictions is, that Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar are, leading the league. Speaking of stats, they're leading the league in points with 11 points through, 10 games for their respective clubs. I think that both defensemen, and that's just for defensemen, they're both great, and, they could be up for a Norris trophy this season. And it's crazy that, this, rush of young players could challenge the veterans for the Norris.
Yeah, when we were both really early in our NHL fandoms, we saw Lidstrom and Chara and Duncan Keith won it, taking home these Norris, these strong, steady two-way guys who, had played in the league for a while. However, the fact that realistically, either of these second-year defensemen could, push for a Norris is crazy. And, I think it's just the evolution of the game. I think, their speed and, their hockey IQ is just, what is allowing them to, make an impact this young in their career when defensemen usually take a little bit longer to, mature into the NHL game.
It's time for us to debate Mr. Hogan's or Zach Hogan's, weekly North Division power rankings. He tagged me in a tweet about 2 hours ago, so might as well go over it. He loves the Montreal Canadiens. He's actually a Leafs fan, but 2 weeks in a row, Montreal Canadiens have taken the first spot. Leafs at second, Flames third, the Jets are fourth, the Canucks are fifth, the Oilers are sixth, and the Senators are seventh. I think that's really a perfect description. It sucks about your Oilers because they are outside the bubble there of the top 4 teams making the playoffs, but who knows, week by week.
Yeah, I guess week by week things will change. And I think, maybe the fact that Hogan's team, took a loss to the Oilers on Saturday night maybe has a factor in them being the 6th ranked in that. However, like I said last week, this North Division is just so tight and, week to week, similar spots, Leafs and Habs at the top, Senators at the bottom, but, week to week, anything can shift. So not too many things to disagree with, although I would like to see, a little bit more from my Oilers in the power rankings.
I think that with the North Division, the only 3 spots that are a lock right now are the Canadiens and Leafs finishing 1 and 2, and the Senators finishing 7th. So that means the spots between 3 through 6 are so undetermined and random.
No, I completely agree. I think those are the locks. And I think, between Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, it's going to be very exciting and down to the wire how these teams finish. Edmonton, they're 5-6 now. However, I believe 3 of their next 4 games are against the Senators, and the other one of that is the Battle of Alberta. And, being an Oilers fan, I know that my team will show up in the Battle of Alberta. So hopefully the Oilers can turn a new page and, maybe they can be a lock for the 3 seed.
Time for Tuesday's picks. We have 10 games on tap for tomorrow. The first one, I just went down on NHL.com, but I have the Sabres over the Islanders, the Penguins over the Devils, which got postponed, unfortunately. The Blue Jackets over the Stars, the Canadiens over the Canucks, the Hurricanes over the Blackhawks, the Coyotes over the Blues, the Flames over the Jets, the Avalanche over the Wild, Ducks over the Kings, and Oilers over the Senators.
Yeah, I think it's a decent slate of games. I'll agree with you with the Sabres over the Islanders. I think the Islanders, they're a solid defensive team. However, it's going to take a little bit longer for them to get into that, peak shape that they are used to playing in. I'll take the Canadiens as well. I think, the Canucks and Canadiens will play tonight, so maybe that opinion will change depending on how that game goes, but I'll just put my money on the Canadiens as of now. I'll go with the Stars over the Blue Jackets. Even though it's Laine's debut, I think it might get soured a bit by the Stars. I'll go with the Blues over the Coyotes. I'll take the Hurricanes as well. I'll take the Flames. I think the Kings are playing solid. I'll take them to beat the Ducks. Ducks don't have a lot going on offense. Gibson's been having to either play insane or that they can't win. I'll take the Avalanche over the Wild, and I will gladly take the Oilers over the Senators.
And I know for me, my record last week was 10-3. I don't know if you count your records, but that's just a fact that I like to share. I got a good record going into this week, so I feel pretty happy about my picks.
Yeah, you had a great record last week. I'll never come to the table with my record unless, I have a good one. I think I went sub 500 last week, so hopefully doing better on these picks.
Well, I'd like to thank again Nolan Thode for joining me on this week's episode of Down to the Wire.
Thanks for having me, Pags.